Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us on this exclusive webinar on the share of culture and why brands need it the most now. Condé Nast and our partners AdTech are excited to present this to you, and we hope you find the sessions insightful. Now, we have been through an extremely unusual year in 2020, an era of collective displacement of sorts, where all that was familiar to us, our daily rituals, our so-called anchors to reality, and our connections to society were disrupted. As a marketeer, 2020 was an extremely exciting and a challenging time to be on the forefront of a brand, navigating those short-term challenges without too much future visibility. All of this while one is also trying to build in a safety net for the brand, essentially future-proofing your business. We at Condé Nast partnered with Deloitte to do an in-depth study on the effectiveness of brand marketing during the pandemic. It evaluated the question on permanence versus performance. The report led to the development of a new framework to measure performance. Share of culture assesses brands based on 5 different factors, including how much engagement they get, their influence, the quality of content they produce, how trustworthy they are, and their domain leadership. Today, we are speaking with some industry experts, brand marketers, influencers, and platforms to understand the post-2020 consumer and explore what they can do to create short and long-term brand visibility by leveraging cultural relevance as the new metric for success. We have a packed agenda for you. And to kick things off, I'm now going to hand it over to my colleague, Alex Kuruvilla. Alex has been at the helm of Condé Nast in India and has had a ringside seat to the evolution of the Condé Nast business here. But before that, here are some highlights from our journey so far.
Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar on share of culture, and thank you all for taking the time out to attend. It goes without saying that we are living through a moment of tremendous social, economic and cultural change. At Condé Nast, it's our dedication to creating the exceptional that's always fueled our innovation and strength. This is the basis for our partnerships with our audiences, partners and industry. I'm confident that today's sessions and the discussions that ensue will be thought-provoking and help you create exceptional consumer experiences. Condé Nast has a vision for the future that's global in scale, but local at heart. As one of the largest, most diversified and most prolific media companies on the planet. We're a truly 21st century media company building holistic consumer experiences within the worlds of our brands. Our journalism and content continue to inform, inspire, and entertain over 1 billion people around the world. Condé Nast India too has come a long way from a print-only business to a truly diversified multi-platform network. We've been entrepreneurial in embedding our global brands and IPs successfully to the local cultural narrative, and even helping shape some of it. Our digital business has grown by leaps and bounds as we have grown our capabilities around our world-class IPs. Our brands have seen a sustained growth in consumer engagement on the back of our ability to adapt to changing audience behavior and to the defining cultural moments of the world around us. Condé Nast India has been able to create a premium audience network at scale with a base of 16 million plus monthly users and a reach of a further 10 million on social. We continue to launch new products for brands to partner with us and leverage our strong audience connect. Spire, our first global audience targeting and performance marketing platform, and Amplify, our social advertising product, were launched last year and are finding strong resonance with partner brands. Over 250 brands used Amplify last year to connect with our audiences through our social and editorial talent. In video, CN India has produced over a dozen shows for TV and OTT platforms. Watch out for our first production for Netflix, The Big Day. We are storytellers at heart, and with Big Day, we take it to a completely new level. The show explores modern Indian relationships through the lens of Indian weddings in full Technicolor, a visual extravaganza with song and dance. Our in-house content studio, CNX, produced over 100 films for brand partners in 2020, even during the lockdown. Nothing is a better testament to our ability to adapt and innovate in the face of adversity and our commitment to keeping our audience engaged than the success of our virtual events. We created 11 virtual-only events last year, clocking a cumulative reach of 75 million, a live audience of 300,000, and cumulative engagement of almost 5 million. And yes, we also print magazines. Perched on pedestals in their respective domains, they power our values and our cultural mojo across platforms and continue to be the gold standard in cultural influence. Going forward, globally and in India, we look to grow our video content offerings by scaling local content, leveraging our rich first-party data for brand partnerships, bringing more global IPs to India, and partnering with industry on issues like measurability and brand safety. Digital, video, social, virtual events, in real life events, print. At the core of all of these is the ability of our brands to set the cultural zeitgeist. Our brands drive engagement and influence with trust and cultural credibility, all areas of value that should be of top concern to brand marketers of the age. How can your brands not just reach an audience, but rather influence, lead, and shape their culture as well? How can marketers and media partners work together to develop cultural relevant and authentic experiences? For answers to many such questions and more details on Share of Culture, I now hand it over to my colleague, the keynote speaker for today, Jamie Jani. Jamie is Chief Client Officer for Condé Nast and works with strategic client partners across the globe. Thank you, Jamie, for taking the time out, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for those kind words of introduction, and I'm delighted to be here with you today. I'd much rather be with you in person in Mumbai, because that would have coincided nicely with England's cricket tour of India. But there we go, I'm here in virtual, and we'll have to make do with that. So my presentation today is entitled Share of Culture, for reasons that will become self-evident over the course of the next 5 to 10 minutes or so. I'm going to start, though, with some macro marketing trends I thought would be worth sharing with you. Of course, we know that COVID has had a significant impact on consumers and on brands, and how brands and media owners have to adapt to these changing consumption habits. And there are many industry talking points. I've just highlighted a few on the right-hand side. So consumers are moving from me to we. This idea that they're now becoming more and more interested in how brands play out in the diversity inclusion space, in the sustainability space, is increasingly important to consumers today. There's also this idea that there'll be a tightening of social media regulation across the globe in 2021 and beyond. Of course, we've seen this huge uptick, this huge upsurge in e-commerce, as many bricks and mortar stores around the world are being closed for a significant portion of 2020. We expect e-commerce to be an increasingly important part of the media mix going into 2021 and beyond. Of course, privacy and data, incredibly important, both for consumers and for brands, and that will continue apace. And then finally, we hope we'll see a return to experiential. Maybe not now, but certainly in the future, this will help brands really connect with their consumer in a meaningful way. And we fully expect the appetite for in-person events to materialise once the restrictions around the world begin to ease. Trust and brand safety have also and will continue to be spotlighted and highlighted over the course of 2021. Edelman have recently conducted a survey which they call the Global Trust Barometer, and they've seen that trust in business, in government, and in media have all declined over the course of 9 months. And correspondingly, we're also seeing many people, consumers and brands alike, being concerned about brand safety. We know that for brands particularly, they do not want to be adjacent to inappropriate content. They need to be sure that they are being placed alongside content that is relevant and resonates with their potential consumer. Of course, at Condé Nast, we pride ourselves on providing exactly this sort of brand safe environment. In terms of growth areas, we have identified 3: video, data, and e-commerce. Video, unsurprisingly, has seen a huge surge in importance over the course of the last 12 months. The ad marketplace itself is expected to grow by 14% in 2021, and we expect that trend to continue. We know that global data marketing spend was $26 billion in 2019, and we fully expect that to continue to grow this year, particularly around first-party data, as we know the challenges that third-party cookies are facing in the environment going forward. And then finally, e-commerce. We touched on already. That will continue to expand. $59 billion was spent on e-commerce e-commerce advertising in 2020, and we fully expect that trajectory to continue into 2021. So that leads me very neatly on to Condé Nast and our influence everywhere, as I call it. At the back end of 2020, McKinsey came out with a quote which says, "Speed, agility, and a new understanding of customer values are the key to navigating the next normal." And today's consumer, in the midst of this global pandemic, are beginning to ask very different questions to those that they would have asked previously. They really want to understand what brands matter to them now. And they're asking questions such as, what do I want? And who do I trust? And how do I get it? But it's not just consumers are having to change. We recognise that marketeers and marketers have to change as well. They have to adapt to what the consumer wants in the future, as opposed to what that consumer might have wanted in our previous world. And it's becoming increasingly clear that you can't rely purely on the bottom of the funnel. I think now, to be successful, to have brand resonance, you really need to concentrate all the way through the funnel. You need to concentrate on that full funnel from top to bottom, with purpose, with intent, and with authority. And it means that metrics that were traditionally core to some of our marketing strategies, such as share of wallet and share of voice, might not be as relevant as they once were. And there is this sort of crying out, this need for a new metric. And we feel that new metric is share of culture. And if you want to be successful as a brand going forward, then you really need to own share of culture. And it led us to develop a partnership with Deloitte to better understand this new metric. And we did 2 pieces of research during the course of 2020. The first piece of research pre-pandemic was very much aimed at media investors and trying to understand more about what they felt would sustain a brand in today's marketplace. And the second half of the study was really more aimed at consumers and trying to better understand what drove their interests and their behaviour when it came to consuming content and consuming media. And it allowed us to identify 5 key metrics, all sort of within the frame of culture. What really makes a difference in today's marketplace? And we found that the 5 metrics were trust, were content quality, were leadership, influence, and engagement. And that led us to this statement that culture was determined to be the fuel for a new commerce engine, more effectively driving consumers through the purchase funnel. And we feel that Condé Nast owns culture. We know that we have the trust, the respect, the authority, and the quality of our brands goes without saying, but we're also confident that we can help drive immediate sales. So working our way right through from the top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel is now a very important part of our future business. But we also know that it's our brands who are really setting the agenda. It's our brands who are identifying what the consumer needs and what that consumer wants today. And our influence is everywhere across all of these platforms, from video to social to experiential, e-commerce to print, branded content and brand franchises. But how do you as marketeers activate our influence? How do you take advantage of some of these trends that we are seeing from a Condé Nast perspective? I've touched on the importance of video, and we see that global video ad spend will increase by 56% in 2024. But we're very well placed to take advantage of that trend with our video proposition, which we call Prime, allowing you as advertisers to take advantage of being alongside some of the fantastic programming that our teams around the world are currently producing. And we intend to invest significantly in our video proposition, both in India and in markets around the world over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. We're also seeing a huge rise in spend on social media. By 2024, 33% of global digital ad spend will be on social. And again, Condé Nast is very well placed to help deliver. We have a product called Amplify, which allows you to attach your brand messaging to our brand handles and then distribute that content to our social audiences around the world, be that on Instagram or on Facebook or on WeChat. So again, Condé Nast extraordinarily well placed to deliver for you in terms of social. We also know the importance of e-commerce. I've touched on it already. 78% of marketers plan to increase e-commerce marketing in the space of the next 2 years. And we are busy building out our e-commerce proposition and our shopper proposition. It's very much a work in progress for India at the moment, but in other markets around the world, we are beginning to accelerate how we perform in this particular space and how we can present both a face to the consumer and to our brand advertising partners. So watch this space for more developments in the e-commerce arena. We also know 80% of marketers will use audience targeting. And again, we have a product to answer to that trend. It's called Spy. It's our data management platform, our proprietary data management platform. And we've already begun to develop global segments that allow advertisers to tap into specific areas of interest. And we're working very hard at the local level to expand and to enhance our data capabilities. So our Indian team will be very well placed to take advantage of your need as marketers, as brands, to activate more granular target audiences. And we can deliver those for you via our Spire product. And then finally, 50% of marketers expect to increase brand equity messaging in 2021. And that really plays into our core heartland, I suppose, in this area of custom content, in the area of branded content, where we can tell a story. We can become the storytellers for you, building out content on your behalf and then distributing that content to our audiences around the world and around our social platforms and our websites and our print magazines. So building out content on your behalf and delivering that content to audiences is another area that we are very well placed to help deliver for you. So if I can just conclude with 3 points. Video undoubtedly will play an increasingly important part in our future. Performance marketing, be that via our product Spire in terms of data or via Amplify in terms of social, is going to increase and grow in its relevance. And then finally, custom content. We can deliver that brand narrative, that storytelling, which will help you as marketeers, help your brands to perform and to really appeal to today's consumer. Thank you very much, and please, I hope you enjoy the rest of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex and Jamie. That was a fantastic start to the session. Very excited to see the big day on Netflix and all the data, content, native and social products in market for India. Now, for the most part, 2020 is a year that we would like to forget. Unarguably though, it did teach us a lot as well. As we ran businesses, we all needed to constantly reassess our investments, understand what really made a difference and what customers were identifying with. We also needed to make difficult choices and break barriers, especially if we needed to survive and thrive. On that note, in our next session, we speak about brands and strategic pivots, an insights conversation with some key brands on strategy shifts that helped them build stronger business models, develop sharper consumer focus and loyalty, plus what they did to rebound from the crisis. How are some of these brands looking at share of culture as a framework to evaluate their marketing activities? On our first panel today, we have Mr. Nikhil Rastogi, the commercial director at Dyson India. Now, Nikhil leads Dyson India business, including all aggressive growth and brand building initiatives by going direct to consumer. Nikhil's career has spanned across the likes of Amazon, Citibank, and HSBC before his current stint at Dyson. Joining Nikhil, we have Mr. Santoshair from Mercedes-Benz. Santosh has had 2 decades of experience in the Indian automotive segment, spread across sales, marketing, retail, customer service, and corporate affairs, and over a decade at Mercedes-Benz. He is currently a member of the leadership team. Completing the panel, we have Mr. Achint, VP and Head of Marketing at Myntra. He's a passionate storyteller and has worked with companies like McKinsey, Microsoft, and Viacom 18 previous to this role. Our moderator for this session is none other than Mr. Karthik Nagarajan, the Chief Content Officer at Wavemaker. He leads the content and social media practice at Group N. And prior to this role, he was leading Nielsen Company's online division in India. Let's go straight into our first session. Over to you, Karthik.
Thanks, Jabir. I'm extremely excited, for this upcoming session. We are calling it Brands on Strategic Pivots, and I can't think of three more diverse brands than what we have on the panel today to sort of talk about it. One being Myntra, another being Dyson, another being Mercedes. So quickly, a quick snapshot on what you can expect from this session. We're going to talk to these 3 gentlemen about how they are looking at attribution funnels and how their prioritization of the different parts of the funnel has changed in a post 2020 world. And then we are going to talk to them in detail about how they understand cultures and subcultures for their brands and their audience, and they take long-term positions in that. And given that we are going into a world where advocacy and word of mouth and influencer marketing has never been more important than it is today, I want to talk to them a little bit about how they're looking at this, especially from a brand safety perspective. And this question is actually open to all the panelists. I think one of the terms I hate the most in this post-pandemic world is, of course, the new normal. But I think one of the most often repeated word at least in marketing circles after that has to be the full funnel marketing piece, right? So I wanted to talk about attribution funnels, especially post 2020, and can lower funnel focus become a restrictive metric, right? Not allowing for a long-term approach to brand building, right? Achint, since you have all the data with you at any given point, can I start off with you? What is your point of view on this?
Sure. Thanks, Karthik, first of all. And hi, everyone. So I think your question around is lower funnel marketing restrictive? Of course it is, in our view. And, despite being an e-commerce platform, despite having a lot of signals on the customer preferences, we are still competing in a space both till offline as well as with a bunch of other vertical and horizontal players when it comes to e-commerce. And therefore, the brand building in the context of why, when you are looking at 3 platforms, which consumers do on an average, before they make the choice, you still need to choose Myntra at the first go, right? To consider Myntra and to, go and browse and have the intent to purchase, right? So it's very, very important that the brand is able to communicate the larger brand philosophy as well as, the very, very clear functional reasons to purchase. and all of that needs to start at the top of the funnel. And I don't think pandemic honestly has changed anything. It has made it even more important for us to have that sort of trusted relationship with the consumer, and raise the importance of the top of the funnel and the middle of the funnel.
Right. Nikhil, how do you see this? Given your category.
Hey, I agree with Achin. So that pandemic has not changed anything, and if at all it has changed something, then I think the whole focus on trust, transparency, and relationship, it's just got more and more strengthened. And if you look at the entire pandemic period, the brands that have really invested behind brand building during the pre-pandemic times have actually reaped the benefit during pandemic times. But having said that, I mean, I like to also look at data when looking at attribution. So we do use data-driven attribution modeling. Of course, when you do digital marketing, you need to do that in terms of choosing the weightages for what you do. And look, it's also the objective and the stage of the organization. There are times when bottom of the funnel marketing is also important. At the end of the day, what we really need is return on investment on the investment. And what we also need is hardcore sales or numbers. So one needs to look at the bottom of the funnel also very, very carefully. But yes, I mean, the bottom of the funnel is of course a part of the entire funnel. So you know what you really make the consumer aware on top of the funnel, then how do you keep pushing the customer down by explaining your philosophy, by showcasing your products, by explaining your features, and eventually how do you close the sale at the bottom of the funnel? Therefore is the entire science. So everything is important. So there's not one which is too different from each other. I mean, I would believe the entire focus on the funnel is fully critical.
Nikhil, but second half of 2020, post 2020, has your approach to this sort of changed? Have you pivoted on how you're looking at this?
So I would be honest to say that look, the pressure on profitability and the immediate focus on cash generation has actually made us do more bottom of the funnel initiatives. But having said that, I mean, what we did was essentially remarketing or reaching out to people who have engaged with the brand before. And why did they do that before? Because we invested at the top of the funnel. So like I said, I mean, brands that have generally done well during this period are the ones that invested during the pre-pandemic period. And now when things are looking better and brightening up, we are again investing back behind the brand in terms of generating top of the mind awareness, and being initiatives which are more on top of the funnel. But depending on which stage you are, and the pandemic crisis was a severe one, we actually chose to focus more on immediate cash generation and looking at converting business which was there to be taken.
Got it. Santosh, I wanted to present another dimension of this discussion with you, right? Which is, I've come to believe that, whatever we're talking about content marketing today, or much of marketing itself, is a rather a cultural intervention, right, in the journey of the consumer or the audience. Now, as an iconic brand, even within India, you made a lot of investments on bringing that story out. Right? How do you see that approach going forward from here, in terms of owning a certain culture and authoring your own culture?
No, I think it's a very critical point. And as you rightly mentioned, we are in India now for 25 years as Mercedes-Benz India. And, we came to India quite back in 1954s with trucks and stuff. So there's a lot of legacy here. And just to add to the other panelists, we generally don't look at upper funnel, lower funnel, in that sense, because, and there clearly we have analytics to say that if you don't focus on the upper funnel, you have a vacuum down. So for us to make, it's very important that we are relevant and we are relevant to the market, because we have templates. We have also, there is on one hand, we have a huge push on standardization because the brand is quite valuable. So there is a huge push from Stuttgart saying, yeah, this has to be standardized. These are templates. On the other hand, they also know that the love and respect for the brand can only come when you make it relevant. So we keep looking at opportunities within the market, trying to see what kind of a narrative, what kind of a story can be said. There are a lot of local, influencers via customers, via a lot of stories in India which people are not aware of. So, and this is something that we try to bring about. And that connect, we did a classic car rally in Bombay. Now it's been 7th year, and I've been now looking for each year on year the way it progresses. You can see small kids, on the Bandra bandstand waving flags, looking at these beauties and classics. So when you go back to your heritage, when you come back and when you try to make content which is relevant in the market, at the same time polishes the brand, I think that helps us a lot. So the key here is, again, how do we do this digital, and we call it digital. Again, this is a word now post pandemic, so called, coming more and more into relevance. But for us, the omni-channel experience is also important, because if you only be sharply focused on digital, and then somewhere it falls, either in the upper funnel, or maybe when we are trying to do campaigns, we are not being true to what we are trying to say here, because those ads and those banners or maybe some videos don't do justice. So our entire effort is to come up with digital ideas, events, properties, and then use it across the medium. Try to create, content which is very relevant and also a cultural fit to the market.
Nikhil, but when we talk about brand like Dyson, how do you sort of look at the cultures and subcultures that you can sort of own, right, and take long-term positions in, where you go beyond even the functionalities as well as the design aspects of the product?
So I think the starting point for Dyson in any market is to really go and explain our technology. And we believe that if consumers really understand what goes behind the technology, what's the level of research, what's the level of sophistication that they are buying, then it starts to permeate into their subliminal mind, and they start a culture or a cult of the technology. So people don't vacuum their homes; they actually say that I'm Dysoning right now, which is actually a brand becoming a part of the conversation, just because there is so much belief in the technology and the output that a certain brand gives you. So we don't directly engage or do cultural stuff. In fact, we stay away from it. And the reason we do that, because many brands try to do that. So, and then we start to, we try to stay away from them and try to really build our brand on technology and the superiority and the engineering that goes behind. But what we have seen is that over a period of time, consumers, because they are human beings like you and me, they start to take this technology into their realm and start to give it a cultural flavor. So, for example, when people style their hair at home, or women style their home, they automatically go for a Dyson Airwrap, and they start to call it that, hey, this is like a salon in a box. We don't say that, but it is our consumers who say that. Of course, we amplify that, we build on that through influencers, through generating content. But as a brand, we always talk about our technology, and we believe that as long as we are able to differentiate from others and clearly establish the superiority of engineering, consumers will actually really make cultural boundaries around our brand, and then will really give it multiple layers than mere technology or mere functionality. So the approach here is a little different. I worked on brands which were very heavy in terms of creating emotional connect, or creating this entire brand story. This one is different. I mean, here the organization believes that the more you talk about the superiority of engineering and the differentiation, the better benefit it gives to the brand in the long run.
Got it. Got it. As you were talking, I was just thinking that there couldn't have been three more diverse brands in this panel, right? But I think one thing is fairly certain is all the three brands that we're talking about today have a stellar track record in terms of leveraging advocacy, especially on social platforms. Um, I wanted this to be an open question. Whoever wants to start on this. Today when the content that is created by opinion leaders, are relevant for all three categories at a different level altogether. How do you sort of look at the challenges that come with it? Say, for example, like brand safety, right? And how are you sort of proofing yourself against it? What is the cost of a big miss in that area for you?
Yeah, I can go ahead actually and take a crack at that. So interestingly, we work with a lot of these KOLs and influencers. As we speak, we have a destination called Mintra Studio on Mintra, where we work with 1,000 plus influencers, on a monthly basis. And what we have realized, Karthik, is, the it's a journey, right, on finding the right match between the two. I think uh, it we have spent enough and more time in educating a lot of these influencers on what the brand stands for, right? There are certain guardrails, and keeping that simple to 3 or 4 points around what is it that you cannot do as a brand, or as an influencer for this brand, and everything else is open, or free for you to play with in that space. And then constantly churning people out while giving feedback, as you learn that process. That's the only way we have realized, you can work at scale. Because I think if you make it too restrictive, then of course, you will sort of constrain the folks from creativity. If you keep it extremely open, then also it's a challenge, as you rightly said, right? So having very strict guardrails on what not to do is what has helped us at least stay on course here.
Santosh, in your category where there's so much at stake, right, for a brand like Mercedes, how do you sort of look at that?
So, a couple of, I won't say years back, 18 to 20 months back, we commissioned a research because we now are a lot into online sales, and 15% of our sales comes online. And that's why we have a dedicated e-commerce platform. So, and that was the biggest question: will people buy luxury cars online? So we went, and when we did a research, consumers were much more ready to give their personal data to a brand like us than to many other existing e-commerce players and big ones as such. And when we went into the inside, there was a lot of trust and credibility. So the first thing we said is to ensure that we won't do anything that will break that, because that's very easy to lose the reputation. So we had to build certain clear guidelines on how we communicate, what do we do. Though the GDPR or the equivalent is not yet implemented in India, we said we take a leap of faith and we try to make our policies a declaration of consent, and explicit consent, not just a tick on the website, etc. And then we start doing it. So there are some of the hygiene that we try to do to ensure brand safety. The other thing is now when we start to communicate, and here again there is something called Mind. We have a toolbox here wherein we clearly say which platforms, what's a no go, what can we do, even and then sometimes we also take a call that it's not always the cost of doing it, because some of them are cheap entries, but the risk is much higher when it comes to brand safety. You may be in the wrong place. And so those are very clear dictates that's there. When it comes to communication, I think respecting this privacy of the customer, and if you are able to develop credibility over a period of time, this is most important. Advocacy will only come when consumers trust. There was the earlier school of thought was you have bloggers, you have people, you can buy them, then they start writing for you. But I think the consumer out there is quite smart. I mean, they are able to read through paid content, not paid content, and it's and many of them are, especially in our segment, they run large businesses themselves. Either they're leading corporates or they run large businesses, so they know the game. So it's very important to be credible and authentic in what we try and do there. And that's something, a very clear guideline to the marketing team, to our agency partners, that even if you do less is fine, but not at the cost of a brand safety or not at the cost of losing brand credibility. So that's something may give some perspectives on what we do as such.
Nikhil, your points of view on this?
Yeah, no, I think largely covered. I mean, brand safety is obviously paramount importance. So never go for things which could backfire, or things which are even remotely controversial or have any aspect of, irregularity around them. So totally avoid that. In terms of, selling and this entire usage of influencer marketing and bloggers, etc. I mean, we believe that Dyson machines are bought, not sold, and word of mouth plays a really critical part. So at no point in time do we pay any of our influencers to do stuff. We are happy that a lot of them actually end up posting content which is relevant for us, and we don't mind boosting that. We do work with leading celebrity hair designers, for example. When we sell personal care, we would work with a lot of doctors when we talk about air pollution and purifier. But the entire focus on authenticity and what should be the right thing to do is absolutely paramount. So at no point in time it's inorganic. It has to be organic. It has to be what's true, what's correct. And there's a lot of deliberation goes behind in terms of how do we associate or whether we do that or not. But generally we try to stay away from any kind of sponsorships, any kind of paid stuff. And we would love the brand to get itself built organically. And we know that if customers like it, they tell more people, and that's how our business has grown in every market.
I love the phrase. It's bought, not sold. I think that pretty much answers everything. I think. We have about 7-8 minutes left. I wanted to talk about just go back to what the title of the session itself says, right, which is strategic pivots that we're going through. And for me, this might not be the biggest, but Santosh, when I go back, when I look at the kind of content that you created with, say, a series called Rushes, and which was more about, sort of the adrenaline sports, sort of a content, right, which is typically not what you see, from Mercedes. Um, um, that comes to my mind. But if I were to ask you, what are some of the big strategic pivots you made in the recent past, and how that have worked for you? What do you say?
You see, the topic in marketing is to be relevant, and using not the marketing should aid the product also. So basically, for example, in COVID times, I am talking now about somewhere in May and June when it was just started. The testing centers were not there. We immediately try to work with a local partner, got those testing center in the head unit of our car, and we said now that we have connected car, you just tell the car navigate me to the nearest contact COVID testing center. So this makes it quickly relevant. And then how do we use this real use cases across the digital medium and go in? So this is one simple, one immediacy, because what is contextual, what is needed by the consumer, and try to solve his or her problem. And that can also be there. So that's on the one end of the spectrum. On the other side is pure play marketing, content creation, what can happen there. And today, India is such a diverse country. There's a lot of talent also as such, and the three-pointed star has always been an aspiration for many people, and at different points of strata. So, we ran also some campaigns with people on how they could get something in life that they desired over a period of time, etc. And this was nothing to do with them owning cars and stuff, but telling stories of individuals about their passion, how they overcome certain disabilities or they overcome certain challenges. So sometimes emotional stories, people are able to connect with the brand. Uh, we have still, in a nation of 1.3 odd billion, we still sell 15,000 cars. It's still big. Of course, we have a 50% market share, but still it's small. But the aspiration of the brand is huge. So 2 years back, we also saw this and we started, for example, our own merchandising. So today, we have a significant amount of sales of our merchandise products. So you may not own the three-pointed star, the full car, but you may own the pen, you may own it. Cycles, for example, one of the biggest category that I saw now post-pandemic is fitness bikes of Mercedes-Benz. The sales have almost gone up 3 to 4 times. So sometimes you don't just look at the product that you sell, but you can also come up with merchandising options, etc., which can also help, to the cause as such. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, we can't talk about the pandemic without talking about Peloton and the like, isn't it? I think I know, Mintra, like you said at the beginning, the last year and a half, especially, has been through a lot of strategic pivots. And I would say, coming up with the concept of a Mintra fashion superstar, or what you're doing with, say, Masterclass, which is actually onboarding influencers and opinion makers on the platform itself. They're all big shifts. But what are, if you have to name one or two big strategic pivots that have really changed the way you're looking at this, that has really worked for you, what would they be?
Yeah, I think it'll be same as what I shared earlier, Karthik. It is moving from being a look good, feel good platform to being a real enabler for empowerment. That is the biggest shift, if you were to ask me, right? If I were to define it, and I think whether it is the role of the celeb when we take a celeb in our brand campaign, or the role of the platform per se through the brand storytelling, it is always about helping the customer do something better in their life. And fashion has a big role to play, and Myntra is there to provide that, and with the right tools and experiences. So it's never about telling you or teaching you, or instructing you what to do. It is about mentoring you, coaching you, and giving you the slight nudges and the right tool set to play with it, right? Because fashion is for playing, and everyone actually has their own version of fashion. With the same piece of cloth, you can do it in different ways, as we know. So that is the role of Myntra as a big pivot that we have made in the last year and a half or so.
Nikhil, if you would have the last word on this subject, what has worked for you?
No, I think everybody is pivoted. And one example I can give is that we used to have a big direct to home team that used to go door to door and inside consumers' house and give demonstration of our products. And that is how we really built the brand and we sold this technology. One big shift because of pandemic is that you could no longer travel, no longer get into people's homes. So the entire demo piece from our stores, from our retailers, from our on-force team has been shifted to a video demo now. So we run a huge video demo center that we started as a pivot, but has been really taken up very, very well by the consumers. So people demonstrated from their houses, from their own kitchens because they were locked in home, from whichever machines they had. They said, hey, you're going for this model. I only have this one right now, but it's pretty similar. Only one tool is different. And this is, I'm just going to clean my own kitchen and show you how this works, or I'm just going to do my own hair and tell you how this works. And the surprising data on this is that if we did that with 100 people, 80 people ended up buying our machines. So we had a 80% plus conversion rate on our video demonstration. And the entire fact that it was so authentic, done at home, done in a real life scenario, in true environment, like Santosh, made this point earlier, that consumers are not fools. They clearly see when you're trying to, do wishy-washy stuff, and people felt that this is authentic stuff. And the guy is also locked just as I am, and therefore he's showing me how the machine truly works in his or her own balcony, and that really works very well for us. And now we have completely shifted from that model, and a large part of our sales happen through our own website, through this entire video demonstration route. And not only that, even for servicing, when we used to earlier go into people's homes, now we do a video setup services, a video on query resolution, and there is a real-time video chat that's all available, which is something that all got added in the last 6 months.
And this video demo, Nikhil, has it worked better than how demos worked in the pre-pandemic phases, would you say?
I would say they're almost at the same level of efficacy. I mean, look, when you go to somebody's house, you also strike a relationship, and like I said, I mean, word of mouth and everything is very critical. So somewhere that piece is still not at the level that it used to be. So when you talk about references and talk about cross-sell, you will have to again approach the same person. It will not be as smooth as if you had spent an hour in that person's house, met the entire family, struck a relationship. So, I mean, that's still a challenge which is there, but I would say it's doing the job pretty well. And it's also expanded our reach beyond the top cities. So now if somebody from Akola wants to see, a demo of how a Dyson Airwrap works on her hair, we have a stylist on this end who can actually tell you how the machine really works and can do a live session with you. So, I mean, there are both pros and cons, but mostly it's worked well for us.
Wonderful. That's a fantastic point to close this discussion on. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Karthik.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Karthik, Santosh, Nikhil, and Achin. That was a fantastic session and some great insights. Thank you for sharing them with us. Now, it is interesting to observe the impact that the last 12 months has had on people. What changed? What do they really value the most? As people adjust, how do organizations identify where they sit within the new context? And how can they help build new ways for people to cope and reconnect? Our next session today goes back to the idea of collective displacement and how brands can act as cultural anchors and harbingers, focusing on the power of the narrative to help build new ways of coping and reconnecting. We are going to talk about the role of creativity and technology in the share of culture framework and how brands are reinventing products and communication strategies to integrate themselves into the empty spaces left by this collective displacement. And joining me today is a brilliant panel, and each speaker is an absolute veteran in their domain. First up, we have Mr. Subhranshu Singh, Global Head Brand and Marketing at Royal Enfield. He's a thought leader, a writer, and a growth catalyst. Subhranshu has over 2 decades of brand and category building experience with leadership positions in global corporations such as Unilever, Visa, and Star 21st Century Fox. Joining Subhranshu, we have Ms. Virginia Sharma, Vice President Brand Solutions at JioSaavn. Now, Virginia is a well-renowned marketing expert, and at JioSaavn, she drives the adoption of innovative advertising solutions for brands and also oversees JioSaavn's client and agency relationships. For our third panelist, we have Mr. Ajit Varghese, the Chief Commercial Officer at ShareChat. Prior to this, he was the Global President for Wavemaker. Ajit is a global media leader with a track record of leading rapid growth and marketing dominance. And our moderator for this panel is Babita Barua, Managing Partner at WPP's GTB. She has over 24 years in advertising, and prior to WPP, she was with the Wunderman Thompson Group. Now, Babita is a mentor to women and students and a well known speaker in the ad tech community and various other forums. So, without further ado, over to you, Babita.
Thank you, Jabir. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session on brands as anchor for culture. Before I begin, thank you very much, Brangshu, Ajit, and Virginia for your time. So, how do brands really push boundaries when it comes to cultural relevance? What are they doing in today's world where there's so much of conversation and focus on scale, on performance marketing, on immediate ROI? So, this is a significant conversation, and I'm very sure that we'll have a very exciting session. Without further ado, let me jump on to the questions. Shubhranshu, my first question is directed to you, but really, Virginia, Ajit, feel free to jump in. So, Subhranshu, in your view, what really is the importance of culture on brands, and how are brands going about building this relevance, building this anchor to culture, and what are the challenges, if any?
Well, that's a great question. I think, uh, if we realize that brands are essentially participating in everyday life, we realize that they are by default part of our culture, as in the way society lives its lives collectively, brands are an integral part of it. And every brand, just by way of doing business, promotes itself. So every brand ends up doing advertising or marketing in some way, shape, or form. But very few brands, really truly iconic brands, can create culture. So I would say not only is it important for brands to treat this as a litmus test of whether they're truly great or not, is whether they're able to create culture. Everybody is participating or witnessing the shaping of culture as brands, as consumers as well. So the way in which I think that needs to be done is firstly to be participative, to be, to have genuine empathy for the consumer mood. And many times when we wear our MBA marketer hats, we ourselves neglect the fact that culture is shaped out in the world. I mean, there are popular culture industries. The popular culture is shaped by literature, by cinema, by radio, now increasingly by authors and creators on the internet platforms. So it's not as if we need to be prescriptive and our commercial acts are creating that culture. If you realize that consumers live their lives and in doing so they create culture, then from that popular mainstream, if you derive more and more energy, you're able to create that culture. You asked me also about the challenges. I think the challenges are about being myopic, being short term in your orientation. Culture building lasts many generations, and so you have to have a long term view of it. You have to be consistent. You have to be sure about the kind of culture that you're promoting. You can't decide to change your mind about culture in quarters. This is a game of, this is a pursuit of, this is a passion of decades, and therefore I think only truly culture committed brands can end up creating culture. So that, in short, is the way in which I think both participating brands, culture industries, and multiple authors, critics are authors, influencers are of authors, media commentators are authors, and so culture is built by many voices. You just have to be in the choir, I feel.
Yeah, I would just like to add a few points there, just in addition, and it's I'm pretty much in agreement of what you say. And I come from a pretty much a brand building environment in the agency, advertising agency background, and now I have moved into a platform. And within 2 months of being in a platform side, I have realized marketers are increasingly getting to the edges of either focusing much more on targeting and therefore getting lost in the digging of data and therefore creating cohorts, creating segments and all of that, or they're going to the full other end of the funnel, which is about performance. So, which is therefore about sale, installs, transaction, and stuff like that. I think somewhere in this whole funnel, consumer funnel, we are missing out this whole engagement, interactivity, building the loyalty, building the trust. That factor to me is sounding very extreme today. I mean, look at it this way: there is $1 billion performance industry today in India, which was almost non-existent 5 years or 7 years back. And these are pure play install campaigns, pure play transaction based, pure play getting into e-commerce of click to purchase. Now that to me, in a way, it's good because you can have the funnel discussion, but in a way, I find it very challenging that it's become either or. People are focusing much more on the other side of the funnel. The other bit on the culture that you ask about challenges is, I feel that somewhere down the line we also think that identifying the right culture, because what we think it is and what in reality it is, a lot of brands get that wrong. Like for example, when we look at the Tanishq ad, okay, it's a beautiful ad. It is about what it should be, versus we know what the culture is, how the culture is evolving, and what is sensitive. That sensitivity is very important. So I think I'm not saying which is either is right or wrong. I'm just saying sometimes we get it right or wrong because we think it should be this way versus what it is in reality. And that's a big challenge. I think Shubhranshu also touched upon this whole point about shaping the culture. But I think it's about driving change, right? Because a lot of brands, as part of this ecosystem of culture, like consumers, like all of us, I think driving change is another big part of that culture change, because we want the culture to be seen in a certain way, and brands want to drive that culture. And sometimes driving change is tough, right? And therefore, that whole bit of commitment that you spoke about, that whether you are willing to stay on course, like Nike, they burned their shoe saying, if you don't stand for my brand, just burn my shoe, don't wear it. I mean, that's like a huge commitment, and they're willing to live it long. Sometimes brands either take it as an opportunity, or if it's a fad of culture that I can see, and therefore I'll do it now and get out later. That to me is therefore a huge challenge for the marketer to build a brand.
Yeah, so I think there's been a lot already said about sort of brands creating culture. I'll talk a little bit about brands understanding and reading culture shifts, because it's one thing to actually kind of place yourself as a brand in the middle of a culture or creating a culture. But I think the most powerful brands are the ones that are able to seamlessly ride a culture shift. Let me give you an example, right? Edutech is a great industry where for many years we're starting to see a bottoms up culture where kids were using Khan Academy or Byju's or YouTube videos, forget Byju's, YouTube videos to compensate for them not understanding a concept in class, way before the parents even realized that they were YouTubing, a 5-minute video. And they were still paying for tuitions and doing all that, but the kids had already moved on. And then the pandemic came up, and suddenly people move to classes online. If you look at it, young people, primary school kids, had a much easier time moving to online classes than their parents did. In fact, their parents were more perplexed by this Zoom classes and had more concerns about online classes. But if you speak to 12-year-olds, they were already getting knowledge and education off of digital channels. So it wasn't as much of a trauma. And so the idea of this is a culture shift, right? And if you look at the stakeholders that need to go through that shift, young people that were already digital natives or comfortable with online did not have to go through it. But what do brands have to do to convince parents that actually taking classes online, they had to go through a lot of education. And that came from brands having to play a very active role with parents to make them comfortable with, doing that. Likewise, there is amongst parents these, every kid needs to know how to code and white hat junior. So there's a lot of trends that brands have played on to say, well, parents want their kids to be coders, let's make it easily accessible. So that's a culture shift that affects generations differently. And I think the biggest thing is the challenge is, do you have the tools and technology to read the signs before others? Are you watching the market to know how the different demographics are engaging with content? So for example, on a platform like JioSaavn, the way millennials engage with content, specifically vernacular content versus Gen Xers versus Gen Z is dramatically different. You would assume a lot of things, right? Last year in tier 1 cities, we saw the growth of Telugu even more than the growth of, Hindi, right? And it's because people who even don't understand Telugu music listen to it because it's great music, right? There's a phenomenon. K-pop is the global phenomenon, like American kids listening to it. So how are you using your data to kind of get ahead of cultural shifts to say, just because I don't speak the language doesn't mean that I won't like that music? And how can that influence a brand strategy? Maybe the next anthem that a large national bank does to cater to millennials may not be an anthem in Hindi, but maybe one in Telugu. Who knows, right? But how are they using the insights to see this shift ahead of everybody else and build accordingly?
Thank you. Fascinating points. Shubhranshu, culture cannot be built in quarters. I really like that. So this brings me to the second question, Ajit, more to you on technology, the role of technology, specifically platforms on culture. How does this help? What is the intervention? And is it really measurable in terms of, the marketers focus on, are we getting a bang for our buck when we use technology for culture?
I mean, if you look at the platforms like us, one of the big things that platforms can help us is when we talk about culture, whether we talk about culture in small segments of people, or whether we call in large segments of people, we can increase it to a society, we can increase it to a country, right? These are various nomenclatures we use, right? I think platforms can help us clearly identify whether you want to go into highly personalized way of culture, which is like cultures within cultures, or you want to go spot national cultures or national trends. Like, for example, who would imagine that if you look at ShareChat and we look at our trends in ShareChat, who would imagine a Varsi festival in Maharashtra can garner 10 lakh people in that place? I didn't know that 10 years back. I didn't know that. Only when we started trend spotting, we realized that there are so many things that happen in the local level, and which is only because we now have a Marathi language people coming into the app, and therefore expressing their interest and their communication and their sharing this content across the peer-to-peer group, right? So I think one of the easiest way for marketers to identify culture is languages in India. I mean, first and foremost is languages. I think that itself can give us hundreds of variations and hundreds of trend spots that we can see in various languages, right? I mean, for example, we assume a lot of our like, for example, I know a typical brand takes fashion as a big trend. Now we realized if I look at 15 languages share chat, actually fashion is a big communication only in the north, or maybe more in Punjab. It's not as much trending in Telugu, Tamil, and Kerala. Now imagine if this communication is, or this trend is spotted by a Myntra or a H&M, they can subtly change the way they try and talk to their audiences, right? So I think easiest way in the ecosystem in India is to understand that there are so many languages and there is huge distinction between people's taste, values, beliefs across these languages. I guess the second thing that the platforms can offer is actually hyper-local and hyper-personal. I think this whole bit of trend spotting and micro trend spotting, whether it is Chhat Puja, whether it is Lakshmi Puja in Bengal, whether it is, I'm talking still very common stuff that we all know, right? Or a Varsi in Maharashtra. How do you utilize this hyper-local trends and hyper-local behaviors of consumers and therefore get into micro-targeting or micro-segmentation, or in the modern language, we all talk about cohorts, right? I think these are all different languages we use, but eventually try and see how much of this can be localized and therefore in trend with the values and beliefs of our consumers. And I think third bit that I would talk about in platforms is this whole communication 3.0. But I think communication 3.0 is all about, I'm not against 30 seconders. I think most of the conversations, even today as a platform, when I'm out in the market to create a revenue stream for ShareChat, I realize people are saying that I have a 30 seconder, can you run it on your platform? And to me, I haven't even understood whether the marketers have understood what ShareChat is offering, right? Or what I mean, and this is not about ShareChat. This is about across platforms. Each platform is able to interact with their audiences in subtle forms of communication and formats which they like. And I think brands and marketers could use these formats, use this way of communication, whether it's memes, whether it is GIFs, whether it is shareable content, whether it is talk about more features. Virginia spoke about how to do videos, right? To me, there are multiple ways of telling our brand stories, and probably we are not experimenting enough to talk to the consumers in the language or the format that they realize. I think these are the 2 3 big platform level advantages we could offer, and different platforms can have different variations of this, but I think as a whole platforms can go deep dive into consumer life and offer solutions to brands which are much closer related to their own culture and their own values and beliefs.
Okay, that's interesting. Shubhranshu?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of things based on what we were discussing a little earlier as well. And,
Yes.
it's an interesting point to underline, which is culture creation, as Ajit mentioned, naturally has to be a group activity. You can only have inspired thinking if you're an individual. You need to have, you have to live with a group, a community, a society at large to be participating in culture. But it's also about actionability. Are you inspired enough to do something? And I'm privileged to be right now with Royal Enfield, where by definition it's about exploration. You buy a motorcycle to ride and explore the world around you, and then there are millions and millions of people who have similar passions. Then they have groups within groups, and we are able to promote other activities besides just riding. So where are you riding to? Why are you riding? Is there a cause intended along with the ride? Do you want to go and do astral photography, and so on and so forth? But the point is, it has to be a cohesive mass, and they have to be actively involved. Now, I know that the world is shifting to electronic platforms. The internet has made authorship possible by millions of others. So this gatekeeping mentality has to go. But I think that should be a facilitator for more and more people coming together and then doing things. And so I think it's not only about platforms, which are huge agents and huge catalysts in creating that culture, but eventually it'll have to be about through the line. Are they able to then get people to do things in the real world, physically, emotionally? And that gestation period will take time, because the world's just getting used to tools and technologies. And on the marketing side, of course, we are richer because we are more informed, we are smarter because we are more real time, and all of the things that Ajit said, I agree. But my point is that society needs to do things to build culture, and part of that could be online, but a lot of it will still be in the real physical world as well.
I just wanted to, I really like that point that culture can only go so far until you actually have a critical mass around it. So I really agree with what Shubhranshu is saying. But to add to that, it also has the risk a brand takes is that whatever they capture onto may not be owned by them as they go. So let me give you an example, right? Netflix and chill became like a cultural thing, which is, what are you doing tonight? Maybe I'm like Netflix and chill. The term chill has been taken over in the context of OTT, right? You're sitting in front of the couch and you're watching. It may or may not be Netflix. I mean, one of the biggest problems that Netflix is facing right now is that, there are other competitors and they also have shows, but you'll still, you've created this cultural nuance of spending time in front of OTT, but it may not belong to you. And so, I think that what we have to figure out is how far do you go in terms of getting people to gravitate towards this movement that is created so uniquely. Like, I think Harley Davidson is a great example, right? You've created this community, but it is uniquely Harley, right? It's not a category culture. Another example is, I think, what Ariel did with Share the Load. In some ways, Share the Load has now become, it belongs to everybody, which is about anybody that stands on the platform of, equal work or shared work. But quite frankly, that was a cultural thing that gathered momentum around one brand, but it's no longer about that one brand. So I don't know what the right answer is. How far do you democratize your, are you happy that Share the Load is everybody's? Are you happy that Netflix and chill is, or do you want it to be contained as it was your it was a culture that is yours. Like, I don't know the right answer.
Yeah. In fact, Virginia, I have a question for you, but this has provoked me to ask something else because Ajit spoke about trend spotting, right? About localized culture. And you're right, unless you go deep, you don't even get a handle of what's really reality. And then, Shubhranshu, you spoke about society has to really engage and actively inspire culture. So I'm just wondering, can brands shape culture, or is it that brands ride on existing culture? Would love to hear quickly what you feel, especially from your business perspective.
That's a brilliant question, Bhavita. I think it's an act of genius for a brand to be able to marshal societal trends for so long and so brilliantly as to be able to shape culture. It happens one in a thousand. But every brand has a responsibility, I would say, an obligation to positively influence culture in any case, because if they don't, they're not good forces in society. So I think we are obliged to be, promoting the right cultures in any case. And a lot of the recent developments around corporate social responsibility, purpose and mission, etc., is all engaged in making corporate citizenship in such a manner that brands are forces for good. But I think your question is, do we ride piggyback and ride the trend, or do we create our own? I think all smart people should manage brands in such a manner that they are contemporary and they're rationally in the right quadrant. But I think the act of genius is, if you can seed, if you can seed something which will yield a harvest for many, many decades and generations to come. So I think creation of culture is that rare prize that everybody must aspire to, but actively participating and pushing culture and society as it's shaping is everybody's obligation.
Okay, that's brilliant. Ajit, anything? Virginia, any bills on this?
My only build is, I think brands actually stand for their positioning and identity, and then they start. I think then they start riding on existing cultures, or keep hopping or keep building on that. Because to me, brands are like consumers, right? I mean, if you take brands as consumers, they're all trying to form relationship with like-minded people, right? So only if I stand for something, I can form a group for myself. I think, and a lot of times when it's too tactical, brand selling or brand marketing is too tactical and too into only purchase, and only you see a brand, you click some price, and therefore, and the e-com platforms have actually made us think that it's only click to purchase, right? But I think, like consumers or like people like us, how do we form our friends? How do we form our peer to peer? How do we make colleagues? Because we have a match of value systems, we stand for something. Eventually, our cohorts become a certain group because of what we stand for. And I think brands are similar, right? They eventually stand for something. They create that positioning in the mind, and then start identifying which are those cohorts of people or consumers that I want to identify and form that relationship over long term. And that becomes the shaping. And therefore, each of our communication, brand storytelling, identification, spend thoughting is all therefore linked to which group do I want to belong to, or which identity is what I want to push and create into the future.
This is quite a good lead in, Virginia, to the question I had for you, which is, what are some of the innovative ways, use of technology, use of maybe, offline, in the offline world as well. What are some of the innovative solutions that brands can ride on to get that strong culture connect?
The first and foremost is, have you invested in a social listening stack? Because you can do as many focus groups and market tests and feedback and whatever else, but ultimately speaking, being really proficient at listening. We've always talked about social listening, but it's more to make sure nothing bad is said about us. Let's face it, that's actually ultimately how social listening ended up playing out. But if done well, social listening will actually enable brands to affect both their online and their offline strategies, right? By the way, another very good social listening is, I love Quora. So if you look at what Quora is it's the better version of Google search in terms of intent, which is what is the conversation and the questions that are bugging people, that they're trying to solve for, right? And it really gets underneath the crux of like, what's my problem statement? What's my pain point? I'll give a very strange example. It's a cement company that actually was looking to launch something, and they really believed that they should focus on price. I'm giving not a culture example. And what they discovered is that majority of the content that procurement people were buying in construction and builders and architects was around looking at environmental cement recycling and sustainable buildings in Dubai. They were reading all these articles, and they were looking at how to differentiate between like duplicate and real cement. So the questions and the conversation had moved from make it cheap to sustainability and this cultural movement in construction and design, towards green buildings. Like if you watch that change, and I grant it's not the sexiest industry, right? But someone who was watching Quora would have predicted that a year before they would have launched their next line of products on green, sustainable buildings. And now you see everybody talk about solar and this and that, right? But this was about 2 years ago that they were focused on that. So what I would say is number one is social listening, but going a step further than just watching the moment marketing to looking for conversation shifts is I think one thing that is very, very powerful. The only other kind of innovations is that, threading together data from different sources to actually come out with a totally different experience. What typically happens is what operations people do really well is that we combine data from 4 places and then we come up with a conclusion. Can you imagine if you came up with a different experience? I was talking to my team this morning, which is that if you can actually do something with young people who are listening to certain tracks, like Miley Cyrus was trending last night because of her look. Could we collaborate with fashion brands to recreate Miley Cyrus's look? And you could actually like win the look with a personal shopper dressing you in Miley Cyrus's look. And I can marry the data from Twitter, which was Miley Cyrus was trending, her followers. It was like like amongst young people, this was a really big deal. And then combining it with e-commerce and recreating these looks for fans. That's synthesizing the data, but giving a totally different experience, not just running a report and internal people talking to internal people, but internal people changing experiences for consumers. We've done that, for example, with our dynamic audio. We take data from 6 different places, which is, location, weather, genre of music you were listening to while you were on the go. And we've devised audio ads that basically stitch together, hey, you're in Delhi shopping, listening, like take a break from your, electronic music and, have a snack at noon because you must be hungry. Like that's stitching together insight from multiple places, but changing your ad experience. So this particular campaign has 1,500 different permutations, combinations of ads for a chocolate. Why not? I eat chocolate for different reasons that someone else does at different times of the day while I'm doing different things. So I think these are just some of the examples where you can actually bring in some of these solutions to help you.
That's great. I love the example of the really dynamic idea of connecting a Twitter feed, a trend, quickly to some behavior leading on to e-commerce. And I think that's really where technology takes us to. Anything, Shubhranshu, Ajit, that you could add to this? Anything from your experience on some innovative solutions for brands and culture to come together?
No, I think completely agree with Virginia on that. I mean, social trend spotting is something that can brands beautifully use to associate with culture. The other bit is, I believe that technology has come to a stage where the answer is yes. Tell me what you want to do. And I think today we are coming to a stage. Look at our own lives. Everything that we did. I mean, if you look at 10 years back, there was always something that we do in the physical world, and there was a digital alternative. I have a feeling that we are coming into a state where everything can happen digitally. There is a physical alternative. You can do everything on the internet today. Getting maids, buying houses, even alternate ways of holidaying has started apparently on digital, and there is a physical alternative if you want to actually venture out, right? So I think technology has made it possible that ask the question and the answer is yes, we can get it done. I just got exposed myself to a different technology group yesterday, which is about, we always talk about performance and click to purchase, and the platform should deliver us closest to purchase, right? We want the consumers in the platform. And I think they came up with an idea and a technology which talks about how do you make your creative work harder. So in your 30-second and 1 minute or 60-second ad, how can you have templates which allows consumers to interact? So if you are wearing if the protagonist in the ad is wearing a particular cap or a t-shirt, the consumer can actually click and say, "Go, oh, I like that cap. I can go to the website, or can I know more about which car he drove?" So the technology allows us to interact with the ad and make it much more accountable and go closer to the consumer. Platform is irrelevant, right? So it is possible, and not just click to purchase. It can have multiple ways. Now imagine in a creator ecosystem. Now we are talking about micro creators to micro influencers to big celebrities. Now I'm creating a particular, I've got, let's say, 1 million followers or even 10,000 followers, and I start creating these connections with consumers, and consumers start liking some of the stuff that I do, and can go straight into brand engagement, brand interactivity, or purchase based on what my following is. Even that level of micro granularity is possible of interacting and getting closer to our consumers. So I strongly believe we are increasingly coming to saying answer is yes. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
So, Babita, just for argument's sake, let me also pitch it a little differently. Although I'm in agreement, we must be very acute in our listening. We must be right on top of the data, and anything that is ephemeral can eventually become, seemingly ephemeral can become a big deal tomorrow. Things just come out of nowhere nowadays. Having said that, I think there is great virtue in the relational context of many people relating to something in equal measure. I think great brands are built when everybody recognizes that it means important to Babita, it means important to me, important to Ajit, and so on. And that's when it gets elevated into culture. If it's just interesting to me and three other people, it can't. So I would much rather be famous before I am loved. And this is my personal take on brand building, because only when you are big can you start shaping culture. You can't cater to 1 million people by cooking in a small microwave. You need a big stove. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when people start actively being engaged, as Ajit correctly said, then technology is allowing us really radically new ways of tooling things up. And we've done that recently in Royal Enfield with something called Make It Yours, which is a configurator on an app called the Royal Enfield app. So you can go for the first time ever and start configuring and personalizing your motorcycle. What kind of badging do you want? What tank color do you want? What accessories do you want? And there are now millions of permutations as against a finite portfolio in a dealership earlier. So I agree with Ajit that technology is liberating a lot of choice and is giving us very uniquely new ways of reaching consumers. That said, I do believe that at the end of the day, they have to be able to relate to it, to love it. And if you're in doubt, just see Indians shopping for whiskey at a duty free, and you'll know what the power of relational brands mean. After sampling everything, they will happily make a dive and go and buy a Johnny Walker Black Label, because you can't go wrong. So that's the way in which I think brands initially take off. And then, of course, you have to run the course and do everything right to build a great culture. So I think it's a bit of both. I think it's technology plus permanence, both together.
Yeah, Shubhranshu, I think be famous before being loved is very provocative. I personally love that, and I've filed it away. And somewhere in all this conversation, very clearly, technology plays an important role, and we know that it plays that. I think the question is, in the zeal of going technical and investing in data and listening and transporting and everything else which is relevant, are we really losing sight of the big collective? What really drives us, what really is appealing to us? That makes it a culture from just a thought. Before we end, I promised that this would be an exciting session, and it has turned out to be that. Why don't we end with all of you come with such rich experience? Just a couple of words from each of you to the audience on what should 2021 be like when it comes to brands and a strong culture connect. Why don't we start with you, Virginia, then Ajit, and we can end with Shubhranshu.
Yeah, I think 2021 is going to be all about connect, isn't it? I mean, I think that we've been spending a little too much time on our own. And I think that it's going to be an amazing opportunity that as we emerge, there's almost like a wonderful openness that you have when you have had the opportunity to slow down and come out, right? I almost visualize it as how you feel after you do 5 minutes of meditation. It almost feels like, what everything that we're seeing is people are a lot more open to trying new things and new brands and new experiences after what we've gone through in the last year. So this is an opportunity for brands to introduce new experiences because people are looking and they're open and they're ready.
Thank you, Ajit.
I think 2021, and since we are coming back from a pandemic, and therefore a lot of things lost and a lot of things we're getting refreshed. I think it's time for romanticizing, which is bring some romance, bring some back building relationship with the consumer, but in a new way, not in the beliefs and not in the age-old metrics, but new ways of building that relationship with the consumer. I think we should reevaluate our values and belief systems in the new digital economy going forward. And I think how the young consumer is probably, like Virginia earlier mentioned, is already changed, and probably we are discovering late that they have already moved on. And that's some trend spotting, and that building that relationship with that young consumer probably will take us a long way. And the last thing I would say is that test new formats of communication, keep testing the boundaries, and I think consumers will fall in love with the brand all over again.
Thank you, Ajit. Shubhranshu?
Well, having lived through 2020, I think one can only have a hope and a prayer for 2021. I think things can only get better. My hope is that, society at large, people, we as consumers in our individual capacities will realize there is going to be a reassortment. There's going to be a reprioritization of what matters truly in life. And I think sensitive brands that are building culture, brands that are empathetic to consumer reality will hopefully go up the totem pole. They will become more relevant. And at the same time, my prayer is that people should realize, both consumers and marketers, that, we are fragile. We have lived through the classical volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, all of it. And it could be another one just day after tomorrow, So it's important for brands to sort of be active citizens in this world. You can't only be bothered about selling your brand, and your snake oil. You have to be part of the larger complex mosaic that is life and society around us, because the world's only getting more and more complex. So my prayer is that that consumers choose brands that make life simpler, that make life tighter, that make life better, just worth living. And I think those are the brands that should be rewarded. And broadly, that's the way I see life shaping up. I think we ourselves as individual consumers, I have gone to those things that I'm most passionate about, even when I've been locked away with family for 8 months at an end. Things which really engage me, I've done more of. We've all rediscovered cooking. We've all, been more health conscious. We've all realized the power of relationships. Suddenly you're playing, bridge with cousins sitting in New York. It's just the need to feel human. And I think brands that, realize that, they're entities in a human world will do well. And that's my hope, and that's my prayer as well.
Thank you so much once again for your time and for the amazing, amazing inputs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Lolita.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sudha.
Rather be famous before I'm loved. Just love that, Shubhranshu. Thank you all for this incredibly insightful discussion. Now, for the last session today, we thought it would be interesting to see the picture from the lens of a celebrity. What advice do they have for marketeers, considering that they influence so many people every day? For our fireside chat today, we have the uniquely talented Miss Radhika Apte in a conversation with the stalwart of the advertising world, Mr. Ashish Basin, CEO, Dentsu Asia Pacific. I welcome Ashish and Radhika for our final discussion today.
Hi, Radhika. Welcome.
Hi.
Great to be chatting to you. I have to say that in some ways, you're a bit of a threat to the advertising industry because you've managed to build yourself as a brand without spending a single dollar on advertising and most of it through digital. So, can you walk us through that? How did you manage to build this brand of Radhika Apte in a relatively short period of time?
I think I never tried to build a brand of Radhika, like Apte, whatever. I know that I find it even odd to say it, but I think I never tried to build a brand, and that in itself built a brand. Is what happened, I think, because a lot of people around me are doing it, and for good reasons and absolutely valid reasons. But I never had that that ambition or something, that desire, and so sort of it just sort of built itself.
Well, at one point in time, there were more memes on the amount of work Radhika Apte was doing than they were on Donald Trump. And in this digital age, everybody wants followers, everybody wants to be on it. Did you make any efforts to get in over there, or was it just happening and you were caught in the flow?
I think I was caught in the flow. I mean, now if see that, I mean, when Netflix launched, I was in 3 of their projects back to back, the first 3 projects that launched. And I think that's what made it so popular, or the memes and all of these things sort of followed. But now if you see, there are other people getting the same kind of attention, and, all these memes about other people and other people also. It's just because I think it's the nature of it. I was just probably one of the first people to sort of experience that. So again, it was never intentional. I was quite surprised about it. But then I have really not ever given a shit about platform or format or image per se, because I think in our industry, what kind of image you have is so important, right? So they used to be like, oh, film actors don't do this, or this kind of film actors don't do this kind of a film, all these kind of things. And I've never really bothered about any of that. I just did whatever I felt like doing at that time, and I think that in itself built my brand as that. You know what I mean? Because nobody else was doing it at that time, I think.
I think there's a lot of learning in there for people who are building brands and even individuals who are building themselves as a brand. Now, last year was very challenging for almost everybody, right? Except perhaps the OTT space and the extraordinary digital consumption that had happened. How was it for you? Was it any different? Was work in line with what you were expecting? We'd love to know how.
I mean,
it
I
went for
think
you.
I think last year was more personal than professional, I think there are 2 fields, isn't it? It's personally, how was it for me, and professionally, how was it for me, sort of a thing. And sort of, I think professionally, I basically didn't shoot for anything. I shot for a series in Jan and Feb, actually a really wonderful show I shot for, which is releasing this year. And apart from that, I was away from the country, and I sort of didn't do any work. That was in a way very good for me, because there were a lot of insights and a lot of space and time to think, and personally also it was very rewarding, because I was working nonstop for many years, and I needed that break to reflect on a lot of things. And so I think I am very grateful for it in a very personal way. But of course, economically and socially, you see it's caused a lot of distress and trauma and loss to a lot of people. But I mean, yes, you can say, oh my God, everything stopped and we couldn't do work and we couldn't do these things. But doesn't it make you feel like it's so small in comparison to where we are and what we are? And it's really not the end of the world.
It is indeed. I think it does get everybody to introspect each for
Yeah.
themselves as to where they are. So I'm glad you felt the same way. But I'm sure now work is getting back more towards normality than before. What are you now working on? What is it that your fans should be looking forward to?
Work is resuming. I'm saying no to most of the things though. I'm doing a small independent film right now, and which I had said yes to a long time ago. So I'm sort of revisiting what a choice that I had made a long time ago, and trying to get prepped for that. And then I'm doing a small guest role in something. I'm doing another series for some, I'm not allowed to say, but other than that, I'm trying to at the moment hold back, because I think what I realized was that I was, what the pandemic and the lockdown made me realize is that a lot of times you work because others are working and you feel compelled to constantly keep working, and you're working out of FOMO. When everyone's not working, you're quite enjoying your time to do other things, and you're actually wondering, what is it that I actually really like, and what is it that actually makes me happy? Does this work really make me happy? And so I've realized that I don't want to do things that, I've this one mantra. If I feel like on a shoot I'm going to be like, oh my god, I have to shoot tomorrow and wake up at 5 o'clock, then probably good idea not to do it. And if I feel like I can't wait to wake up at 5 o'clock, then I should do it. Not that I've made choices like that necessarily, but I want to make those kind of choices from now on, at least a little bit more.
And you think you're being able to do that just now? No pressures on you to take
Not
on
at
more?
the moment, not at the moment, because necessarily not. I mean, I'm happy about what I've chosen, but to be very honest with you, those kind of projects where you go like, oh my god, I can't wait to get on a project, happen very rarely. You talk to any freelance a person, any job, or even a office job, there are very few days when you go to office, you go like, today I can't wait to go to the office, or this is the project I really can't wait to do. It doesn't happen every day. So a lot of your job is quite mundane, and it's quite takes a toll. So those opportunities are lesser, and I think there are even less for women in our industry in general. And as far as our content goes, also it's not very very challenging necessarily to me, I think, on a personal level. So I'm trying to take my time at this time and just figure out that, do I not want to be challenged constantly, or do I actually want to you know uh, wait and see what comes and what doesn't come? Because I think I came here and I always maintained that thought that I'm not going to really run behind the things that I personally think are vain. I mean, again, my vain can be the most precious thing for somebody else, and my precious can be really vain for somebody. So there's no judgment here. It's a very subjective call. But I didn't want to chase those things, but I ended up doing the same. So that realization has dawned upon me, and it's hard to detach yourself from it. You get a taste of a fast pace, constant attention, money, a bit of popularity, and all these things, and it's a bit difficult to then pull yourself back from it for various reasons. So I'm in that process.
Good. I'm glad that you're getting time to introspect and choose, and I'm sure that'll work out well for you. Slightly changing
Yeah,
tack.
yeah,
I've been in advertising for 33 years, and I've
yeah,
always looked at brands using celebrities to build themselves or to
yeah,
pass the message on. But we always see it from the side of the brand. I've always wondered. So, for example, if you want to choose a particular celebrity, you'll see that how does that work with the image of the brand and so on and so forth. I've always wondered, how does a celebrity choose a brand? Or do you at all choose a brand? Or is it in general that whatever comes your way, will you take it? If you do choose, what is the selection process? What makes you decide what brand you would endorse or what brand you would want to work with?
right. So I'm going to say that in the beginning, when you're climbing up the ladder and you're not at the top of the game, you don't have too many options to choose from. So you are offered a certain thing, and you just have to choose whether you want to do that or not. It's not that you're offered a variety of brands, and you can pick and choose whichever you want. But I'm not saying it's not a choice. You do still have a choice to go with a brand or not go with a brand. Like, there's a whole thing of, especially in the film industry, that, oh, you don't have a choice, you have to take what you get. It's a choice, I think. I was fortunate enough to get certain brands that I do believe in as well. I like their philosophy, I like their products, I think the quality is very good. But I think when I'm reaching a place, or at least I'm in the middle now, where I do get a few options to choose from, I'm trying to choose things that are more in line with my idea of how I look at life, or how I look at things in general, and not completely off um, my nature or my character. Because I think then it is really hard to sell, and the fakeness of it really comes through. The it becomes an advertisement rather than being it genuinely. Because I when I'm trying to promote, I'm trying to use it as well. I'm trying to be a part of it, because I am really not interested in fooling people and trying to sell something that I absolutely don't believe in. So I just find that at fraud, and I wouldn't like. And we all as consumers have been victims of that all the time. So I don't want to be a party to that. So I use what I promote, actually. And if I like something, I don't like something, I like to talk to them. I like to ask them how we can do this or how we can do that. And I like to be authentic, and I like to collaborate in the content of how we are going forward. I don't force it upon them. As the end of the day, it's their brand and it's their everything. But if there's something that I completely disagree with, then I wouldn't do it, and I'll put it across right before doing it. Because otherwise, what I feel is that when I'm performing, I'm a character. So I can be suppose I can be a patriarchal woman in a film, and that's fine as long as the film is not promoting that. But when I'm promoting a brand, it's me, and it's me as in my personality. It's absolutely me, Radhika. So that is very important for me. And so that relation and that connection has to be authentic for me to be able to take a brand on.
And since that's so important to you, and that's absolutely the right thing, because only then, if it is authentic, does it relate with the consumer much
I
better.
agree.
But if
Yeah.
that is so important to you, what do you think is the right stage for an influencer or a celebrity to be involved in this? Because in the days gone by, there would be a script, everything would be worked out, and the celebrity would just be called in and had to sort of act
Right.
their part, right? Is
Yeah.
that the best way, or would you like to be involved earlier in the content? How does it work these days with you?
I get involved earlier in the content. So if I'm shooting it, I am given this at least not too early, at least a week before. So they give me the script. I go through it, and then we have a conference call or whatever it is, where I ask for explanation sometimes of things that I've not understood, and I suggest alternatives. And if there are very few times I've put my foot down, but I have put my foot down a couple of times, very specifically with certain brands. And I make these things clear right at the beginning before signing, so nobody feels betrayed or nobody feels like, but you've signed it and now how can you go back on it. So I do like to get involved before they lock the script, and give my inputs and sort of discuss it. I don't arrive on set and learn my lines and don't care and deliver them. I don't do that.
But then what do you say of several celebrities? I'm not necessarily saying you in that, who are promoting maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 brands. Now, you surely can't be authentic and genuine and involved in all 30 brands, right? So is that a trend that you would agree with? Do you see yourself doing that?
I don't have 30 brands. I wish I did, trust me. I'm joking. But I think I do have about a few. How many? More than five at least, I think. And but some of them are big, and my commitment is a longer commitment with them. And so for me, that's manageable. To be very honest with you, a brand takes 2 to 3 days out of your life in a year. It's really not hard to get involved. Even if you have 30 brands, that is probably like 1 hour for each brand for each day, that you have to actually have a conference call, read their scripts. Scripts are not 100 pages. They're probably 2-3 pages. It's really not that much work for the money they pay you, you know? So I think it's possible. 30 is not a massive number. People do five films a year. I don't think it's impossible to get involved in your brands and you choose. I
Don't
don't
say
think.
that. Clients will start cutting the money that they pay us for celebrity
Oh.
advertising.
No, what I'm
But
trying to say is that you get paid for something, you should
of course,
deliver. You know, in the sense it's a job. You know, I mean, yes, you get paid for your name. You don't really get paid for the work as much as you get paid for the name. But I'm just saying that, and you should be getting paid for the name because you know, everybody's making a lot of money. Let's be honest, not just the celebrities. But I'm just saying that it's not a lot of work, is what I'm trying to say. No one's asking you to do a research for a month. It's literally half an hour of your work for one ad shoot, you know, to go through it and read it and give your feedback.
well, you have become a star in an era where social media is very critical to our lives. In many ways, social media has helped build stars like you as well. But then we're seeing that it's a double-edged sword. It has negative aspects. It's got fake news. It's got trolling. It can really be damaging at times to that. How do you cope with it? Do you read every negative post or Twitter comment that comes in? Does it sort of, does it rile you up?
I never read any comments. So I just read, sometimes on Instagram I'll read like the first few because they will be from my friends. Because the people you follow, their comments come first on Instagram anyway. So I'll just read them because that's fun, but I never read trolls. I did in the beginning when social media was new, and I read a few things and they were just so cruel and cowardly that I just realized I don't want that energy in my life. So I just don't read them. And social media also started having a very bad impact on my health, my mental health. You know, I was addicted to it at certain points, and it's unnecessarily brings you out of your present life, and you know, you start living other people's lives, literally. And I had to make a very conscious effort, and I slipped back a lot. So there are so many benefits of social media and equally disadvantages. So I'm really training myself every day for the last couple of years to focus on the best part of it, to use it for my work, to use it to actually learn about some other things. Like I love to read about photography, or like food recipes, for example, is something that I absolutely adore. I love cooking um, on an Instagram, but beyond that, I try not to um, make it what it is not.
I think that's very useful inputs to many of our younger audiences who really need to follow what you're
Yeah,
saying. So
it's
thank you
really
for that.
hard. Yeah,
It is,
yeah,
it is because it's such an integral part of our lives in many ways. So
yeah,
it's good that you found a coping mechanism that's working
yeah,
so well. Well, I know we are short
yeah.
on time, so perhaps the last question on this: where do you see brand Radhika Apte now going? What's the next step on that? One part is your professional work and ambitions that you will have in your career, but the brand Radhika Apte, as we know today, where do you see it evolving over the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years?
I really don't know. I just hope that it keeps surprising you as it surprises me, and it goes to places where it was not predicted. I think my brand is not trying to be like anybody else. I'm just trying to discover who I am and what I am and be honest about it. And so as long as I manage to continue with that, I'm sure it'll be exciting for sure.
Well, thank you, Radhika. You're definitely a brand which is not like anybody else. And I wish you all the very best. And I
Thank
continue
you.
to hope that you will continue to be what you are. And that is what makes
Thank
Radhika
you.
Apte. Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashish and Radhika, as well as all our other panelists and speakers who joined us today and shared their insights with us. If you have any questions for our panelists or for the Condé Nast teams, Please do send them to sales@condenast.in and we will try and answer them for you. Thank you for joining us today. Take care and stay safe.